this is Johnny Bergen along with Stephanie Tice, aka the Blues Raccoon, and welcome to our video podcast, No Border Blues, which is a look at hidden blues scenes from around the world and international blues artists that you should know about.
Thank you, Johnny. Johnny Bergen, well known as the worldwide West Side guitar man. He's regularly toured and collaborated with musicians all over the world, including Europe, Japan, South America, Russia, and we hope maybe Australia.
You never know.
You never know.
Stephanie Tice recently produced No Border Blues Japan on Delmark Records, which is the first American compilation of the underground Japanese blues scene.
Our show today, No Borders Blues, is sponsored by the Chicago Blues Network, which is an educational platform that honors the living history of Chicago blues.
You just heard our today's guest playing harp, and you can see why we're excited to have him on the show already. Snooks La Vie from Adelaide in South Australia has been a powerhouse in the South Australian blues scene. He's won the Best Vocalist of the Year. It's the Southern Australian Best Blues Vocalist of the Year. He's won that 2 years, and his career has had many twists and turns, and he's been in some very popular bands over the years. Welcome, Snooks La Vie.
Welcome, Snooks.
Thank you. How are you?
We're really great. Hey, I have to start with your name, Snooks.
Yeah.
Where'd you get it from? Tell me a little history about the name.
My name is Paul, but so it's a boring kind of blues name. So, but I guess I was it started one day. I had this gig van that I used to drive around doing gigs in, and it was all rusted out. Gig van. I used to have to sit in the middle of the bench seat and drive it because the rain would come in through the rust in the top of the door rockers, and it had a cassette in that van, which my friend gave to me, my music colleague gave to me, which is a Snooks Eaglin recording. It was a rare recording. I can't remember if it was a Capitol recording that he did or whatever, but it was in my cassette player. But every time I went to a gig, I'd play Snooks Eaglin. And one day I pushed the cassette in and disintegrated due to sun damage. And I was just beside myself because it was the only tape I had. I didn't, run another copy or anything like that. And that was it. I never got that record again. And he said, "Don't worry about it, man. We'll call you Snooks. You can be Snooks La Vie." and I hated it, but it sort of got around, and everyone knew that I was an avid fan and music appreciator of Snooks Eaglin and his music. And at that time I was listening to a lot of people like Wainoni Harris, Smiley Lewis, amongst other guys that were, and Guitar Slim that were Louisiana kind of based. Some of those guys were based around the area. So that's how the name sort of came about, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's a great story. The dissolving of the cassette tape,
Yeah, that's a true story. And my parents now seldom call me Paul. They call me Snooks,
Yeah. Well, that's a great name. So.
That's great that you sort of, that you were into people like Wainoni Harris and things like that. Were there a lot of people was that kind of a fad, or were you just sort of on your own? I mean, how did you discover this kind of music?
I was definitely on my own because, like everything, my father played a lot of records when I was a kid. He's a great singer, but he never performed. But he was singing around the house playing music, and there were a lot of, there may have been people like George Jones or Merle Haggard or something like this, or Willie Nelson. But there was also soul records, that he would play. He was into Robert Cray and a whole bunch of other people. My dad's 81 now. He's still a massive music fan, so he had lots of country records, lots of soul records, and lots of blues. So that got me into it. However, I grew up in the 80s, so all my colleagues and friends were into the punk movement and the metal scene. So of course I cut my teeth originally in punk bands, obviously, but I don't think my heart was ever in it. I mean, I appreciate it, and I love old school punk. I love the Cramps and all those kinds of bands as well.
I listened to them a lot in high school.
Yeah, and I love bands like Gun Club, and I love a guy called he's in a band called the Pink Monkey Birds. I'm trying to think of his name now, but I dig
Flat Duo Jets.
Sorry?
About the Flat Duo Jets.
I've never heard of those cats, man. I've heard of the a guy called Rudy Protrudi is in this punk band. I'm trying to think what they're called now. They got the Ramones kind of hairdos, but I think they were around the same time as the Ramones, or maybe before. But their name escapes me. I'm on the spot. But
recently we were talking with Trick Bag and
okay.
Tommy Moberg, who founded Trick Bag, and they've been together for 25 years in Sweden. He was into punk and ska.
Yeah.
It started with ska and Johnny Winter, you know, and then it's going into, it started, ended up being a blues band. But I think people who were into punk back then were searching for things that felt authentic and real. So that was into blues.
But I think, it was that music was about attitude. And if you look at, people like, to me, Howlin' Wolf, he's a folk artist and stuff, but to me, I look at him as a punk, performer, because he came out with attitude. He didn't come out,
it was all
crooning and shaking his ass. He came out, crawling along the floor, licking the microphone stand, or on a mini bike doing a wheel stand, or coming down from the curtains, or shaking a beer bottle through his fly. That was like that had attitude, and that's what the punks were doing. So I guess my music taste has changed over the years, whereby when I first got into the music, I was trying to hone my craft and maybe I think go for that West Coast polished sound. But as I got older, I err on more on the Chicago perhaps, or I like that raw edge. So I love, people like Lightning Slim and that kind of, and Howlin' Wolf, and the early Muddies, the big grittier stuff. I like imperfections. I don't like stuff that, it's not that I don't like it, it's just I find it orally not as pleasing as stuff that has flaws and grit, if that makes sense.
It totally does. So you were discovering this kind of music as a young guy in Adelaide, and then how did this lead to kind of getting a music career started?
It wasn't until I started working my first job in a local council, doing horticulture. And I did an apprenticeship in that. And we had a work function once, and he was into blues, and he was playing guitar at this work function, and I started singing some blues stuff. And he sort of said, "Man, I thought you were into punk music." And he goes, "We should start a band." We started a band called the Delivery Men, and it was a West Coast based band. He was into Ronnie Earl and Bobby Blue Bland, all these guys. So that's how he got me into that, sort of away from the punk music and into my first band, the Delivery Men.
So and said, "We need a singer," and you're it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was it. So basically I started as a blues shouter, where you're cutting off, if you look at Smiley Lewis, they're short and they're shouting notes. It's phrased really, really well, and it's beautiful. But then over time, I sort of moved more into the soul bag, which is, more kind of Junior Parker kind of angle.
It's a little more delicate. And is that sort of, how did all this lead to the Hiptones? And just tell us a little bit.
So the Delivery Men were a band which was with my work colleague that got me into the blues. He started. My dad had that stuff happening around the house, but he was the guy that I worked with that got me into harmonica. He said, "I've got a harmonica," and he lent me a harmonica. And there's another story to how I picked up harmonica as well, but I won't go into that. But,
please. This is
how I first picked up the harmonica was my first girlfriend, who's not with us anymore, God bless her, but she was an avid marijuana smoker, and she had a water bong. I don't know if you know what a water bong is.
Yeah.
We have those here too.
He had one of them under the bed. And it was a water bong, but it was shaped it was a male appendage. Kind of.
Okay.
So it was under the bed, and she said, "Can you please?" And I didn't smoke. I was a bit naive, and she was slightly older than me. And I reached under the bed to grab the water bong, and my hand scurried around under the bed, and there was a box there, and I pulled out the box, and it was a Hohner harmonica that her former boyfriend had left, and it was brand new. He'd never played it. It was brand new in the box. So it was like strangling a cat. So I'd sit in my car in her backyard and play harmonica, with my cassette player in my car, and I'd play, because she wouldn't let me play in the house because it was like someone's, strangling a cat,
That's one of the best stories about a harmonica discovery I've ever heard.
It's actually a true story.
That's
It has
great.
the details have the ring of truth.
Yeah.
Looking
It's
So,
Alec bombs.
and then, listening to, and then I found through some other colleagues, I then found, people like Kim Wilson, the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and that was the start of everything for me, from finding all these other guys that Kim was into, Slim Harpo and Papa Lightfoot. There was a whole bunch of, and I'm in my 20s by this time, so I was learning, I was, an open channel, for all this kind of music.
That's great. So were you like the only harmonica player in Adelaide?
There was, there wasn't many, and I was embarrassed to say that I was a harmonica, when I was a younger guy getting around, and because I'm like in my 20s and all the girls are 20 years old in the 20s as well, but it was not cool to have a harmonica because, be a harmonica player, because those harmonica guys were, those old drunk guys in the bar that would pull out a harmonica when a band's playing and just make
Like those guys.
an arsehole of themselves, And so, girls would come up to me and, at a bar or something, they say, I heard you're a musician. Yeah, I'm a musician. What do you play, man? I'm a harmonica. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? A harmonica to me is an extension of my vocal. So to me, I think I'm first and foremost a vocalist, and then harmonica player. But
Like Junior Parker.
I love Junior Parker. Yeah. I just love how it's so simple. He wasn't playing Little Walter, that virtuoso kind of big band kind of playing. He was just playing an extension of his voice.
So when you were in the band, you were Sony. Did you tour around just Australia, or did you do Europe, the United States, or just?
Yeah. So the Sony thing came about. We have a lot of good bands in Australia, but none have really broken through because our population is so small. No band has really broken through as such that's a straight out blues band. I guess the same thing happened with the Fabulous Thunderbirds. They sort of went they did that stuff with Nick Lowe, it went a certain way, but I don't know if it sort of cut right into mainstream, popular music at that time. So it just was there because it was quite unique. We were quite similar in that regard, that we came through the door playing a brand of soul music. There was a kind of a resurgence of that kind of music coming through. There's bands like the Bamboos that were doing like stuff like the JBs, and Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings. There was that movement coming through. But as you know, that sort of stuff, it's a groove sort of thing. There's not much in the way of solos, or it's just like, it's like trance. It's like a groove, So we had guitar solos, we had harmonica. So there was that point of difference. No one was really doing that in Australia. And I guess Sony, being a major record company, wanted to sign someone that was slightly unique, that was listenable, before another label picked it up. And then, so they were, how major record companies, they don't want to, they've got a business to run, but they sort of, they sort of want to make sure that they're cutting edge, and they want to get in before someone else gets in. If it is to take off, they're going to be, at the forefront, of
Right.
of that. So, but but it was, I toured mainly with Chris Isaak, so I'd opened for Chris Isaak. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris.
Of course. Wicked World.
Yeah.
What was that?
So, which was weird because when I was a young guy, I used to love his song called Blue Hotel, and then a few years later, there I am, opening up for him, and then he's asking me to give him harmonica lessons and stuff,
Really? I'll tell you something funny. The first thing that I ever recorded was a 45. It never did come out until 20 years later. And my goal, I wrote this kind of sad surf sounding instrumental, and my goal was, to get it to Chris Isaak, but I did not complete that train of action. But anyway, that is just so neat. And so when you tour Australia, there's like 4 or 5 major cities in Australia, right? And that's about
Sydney, Melbourne,
Perth.
Yeah, Brisbane, and Perth's like way over west, which is just out of the question,
Right.
really. But it's not like the States. Like we're in the States, you can drive between Dallas and Memphis and do, 50 gigs on the way there. You know what I mean? One thing astounded me when I was in the States, when I've been there, the few times I've been there, is there's never any real open country. It's like there's always like a gas station, or there's always a car yard, or there's always something. There's never hours on end. In Australia, there's just hours and hours on end of nothing. No people, you just wild animals like kangaroos and and so you got to be wary about how you drive, because you got animals jumping out in front of you, and it's not double lane highways. You got to overtake trucks and stuff. So it's quite daunting, and so you're driving a long, long way before you get to a gig. So if I'm in Adelaide and I want to do a major gig, I've got to drive 8 hours to do a major gig.
So your closest city is Melbourne, and that's 8 hours away, right?
Yeah, and there's nowhere really to play in between that, unless you play in some hole in the wall and they just throw bottles at you because they just want to hear AC/DC or something like that, or Guns N' Roses.
So was it an uphill battle playing this kind of music for you?
It's always has been, but Australia is very different. Like I talked to Kim Wilson about it, and I spoke to Aki Kumar about it, and in America, because there's such a large population of people, you can do these little gigs and stuff, and even if the NBL's on or something like that, there's still enough population that if a quarter of them go to that, there's still another 3/4 that can go and see a gig, and so you can make a living doing blues, even though blues music's probably not the popular thing, and it might probably hip hop or something like this, or just straight out pop. You can still carve a living of doing blues. There's still enough people that will want to see it, and so for me it's about being versatile. So I sing George Jones songs, I sing Al Green songs, I sing Ovi Wright songs, I sing Smiley Lewis songs. Like I do whatever's because you just try and mix it up a bit and hope that you can sort of like touch someone or move someone in some way. If you don't get them with the Chicago stuff, maybe you get them with the soul bag. If you can't get them with that, you might get them with the the alternative country sort of bag. So it just depends on what the audience is and how you're doing it. But it teaches you to be very versatile, I guess, into playing in Australia.
We've noticed that in Europe too. Like,
Yeah.
for example, a guy I work with a lot, Kike Gomez, he's basically he loves Little Walter and he loves Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
And it's all
Same as me.
perfect sense in Spain, but you just wouldn't see that here.
Yeah.
You'd have a Sinatra guy or you'd have a Little Walter guy,
But not a blend.
Right. So,
Yeah.
hey,
There's a guy called Hunter. His last name's Hunter. I can't remember his first name, but he sort of does a lot of like the Howlin' Wolf stuff, but then he does like the, I guess, Magic Sam sort of thing. And that's the thing, unless you're freaking Magic Sam, that West Side Soul record, that's about one of the few records I've seen where I go into some hipster bar and they're playing it, because it's so cool, that record, that it's beyond blues or beyond jazz or beyond pop music or any music. It's just the coolest thing that you can't not help but love. That Magic Sam West Side Soul. I don't know if you know that album, but
of course. Are you kidding?
yeah. So it freaks me out when I walk into a bar and I hear all these hipsters with sleeve tattoos, and I haven't had tattoos in years. When people around where I come from had tattoos, you're either a villain or a criminal or you're just trying to be a rebel, and like I haven't had a tattoo in 25 years. Now people are covered in these tattoos. They're rich people.
Sideburns.
Yeah, they used to be really big.
Those are like Freddie King sideburns.
Freddie King. Yeah, I love Freddie King. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. It's just, I don't know. I guess I was a late bloomer, and sort of then I started getting some stubble. I thought, I've had these since I'm nearly 50, and I've had these since I was 18.
Nice.
In various forms and shapes and sizes.
So, Snooky, is there a group, your band that you've been with a long time, like a group of guys, or do you pick them up away, or?
Yeah, look, Adelaide, the whole music fraternity in Australia, we have about 30 million people, I think, and the Australian music fraternity is quite close. So I have friends in Sydney and Melbourne that I can just go, because we just know each other like family, because it's such a small, even though we're 13 hours drive that way and 8 hours the other way, we've sort of come together, and people find out fairly quickly, when you're that fraternity of people that enjoy that kind of music, because it's kind of far and few between, I guess, these days. So yeah, I have people in Sydney that I can go and play with, people in Melbourne that I can go and play with. In Adelaide, a lot of sound guys that are coming, or sound people that are coming through, they'll see me and they go, Snooks, you're always playing with this guy or that guy, and you've played with that drummer before, and then you play with that guitar player in that band. So we all, like with Nikko, he's in a band called the Streamliners. So, I'm playing with him in a duo, and then he comes and plays in my band sometimes. And then I don't really have a band as such anymore. I sort of freelance around. I sort of play with my partner, Courtney, is a singer-songwriter. So I play with her. I play a lot with Nikko, doing various bands and duos. That was the thing also in Adelaide when poker machines came in and stuff. The band thing was crippled a little bit because hotels and venues didn't want to put on full bands anymore because they couldn't afford the cost, the outlay. So then solo acts and duo acts came to the fore. So we have a lot of duo stuff, and then the fact that we have residential sort of things happening, so the drums and loud guitars kind of can close venues down because people can't stand. They move into a place because they like the sights, the sounds, and the smells, and then when they move in there, they decide they don't like it anymore and they want to shut down the music venues. And it's the very reason, the vibrancy and the reason they moved there in the first place. Then they move in there close to a venue and then they don't like it anymore.
So it's a vicious circle of gentrification.
Yeah.
Artists always lose out in these scenarios because, they're the first people there, and then they're the first people that have to go.
Yeah. So it's a slog. It's a real hard slog, and you have to, like in Australia, you have to really be able to. For me, you can't do just like I adore what Kim Wilson does. How he's does those blues review bands and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the Fabulous Thunderbirds, if you notice, that does cross over from blues, rock and roll, soul.
Right.
But those guys can all play. That's the difference, though. But those guys can also play blues really well.
That's one thing I like about you, is that you've gone and done a lot of things over the years. I mean, you were a straight up like soul singer, kind of with the Hiptones, and you've got this sort of honky tonk incarnation, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
But it grounded in blues and the blues shouters and all that. I mean, I could hear that right away, and that really appeals to me. Why don't you tell us a bit about it looks like you worked with Mud Morganfield when he came to Australia, right?
Yeah. So Mud,
he's in James Cotton's shoes, huh?
Yeah. So Mud came about, like, Mud to me is he's like my surrogate father. We haven't spoken for a while because of with COVID and etc. He's been busy, and he's unfortunately his brother passed away recently as well, but which was sad for Mud's family. But what happened with a friend of mine who I play music with, a guy called Sav, he goes by the moniker JJ Fields. He, as a kid, would tour with Canned Heat in the States with a friend of ours called Ray. And Ray was a sound guy and also a tour manager here in Australia. And he would tour manage Canned Heat here in Australia. But then he'd also, because he was good at it, he'd also do the tours with Canned Heat, in the States. And my friend Sav, as a young teenager, like he would have been 18 or 19, would head over and set up, Henry's guitar amps and stuff like that. And then Junior Watson joined the band. So and James T came as well through that era. So he was just there doing that sort of stuff. So Ray was looking after Canned Heat for all those years throughout the 80s. There's another guy called, I can't remember his name, but Dave somebody, who's Mud's agent and tour manager in London or in England. And he's friends with Ray through Canned Heat. And he said, look, I'm looking after Mud Morganfield here in the UK. Have you got something, he said to Ray, have you got a band that you can put together? He goes, yeah, Sav, that used to, do the stuff with Canned Heat. So Sav put myself together with Nikko, and we're all like brothers. We've been playing together for years, and we put together a band doing predominantly Muddy Waters songs. But Mud wants to put he's trying to do his own thing now. He's done the Muddy Waters thing, and because he sounds like his dad.
Right.
He just wants to do. He also wants to do his own thing. But you know, the Muddy Waters thing is a way of, you know, bringing in income and keeping the, you know, the wheel turning while he works on his other stuff as well, you know, and building a groundswell at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's how that. Sorry, that was long-winded.
Oh,
No, just let it flow.
So that's basically how that came about. And yeah, me and Mud just kicked it off pretty. We've got a similar sense of humor, and we just hit it off. And it was a full-on tour. It was a 3-week tour we did. We did the Byron Bay Music Festival. You should get on that one. I think they'd love you, Johnny.
See,
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Yeah, we did. So we did the. We did a few. When you do Byron Bay Blues Festival, you do a few side shows so that you can make a bit of money, you know. So, and they're all hooked up through Byron Bay Blues Festival, Blues and Roots Festival. Notice now they have massive bands now. I mean, they have Bonnie Raitt, they have Buddy Guy, they have Patti Smith. You know, they have all kinds of people there now. It's not
right.
like it was when I first went there, when it was Magic Slim and the Teardrops and all those, and the Paladins were coming through.
There's some real genuine headliners in the blues. You sort of have to go outside the blues to have.
Yeah, and you have to in Australia. So, you know, there's bands now, like they have the Pogues and stuff like that doing Blues Fest, you know. So they have just anyone that's, you know, going to pull a.
I didn't get the Pogues for the longest time, but like Chicago blues, the Pogues is a music of a diaspora.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
It's like once that clicked in my mind, then it's like all of a sudden, like, I get it.
In 2021 there in Australia, aside from all
2020, we're sort of getting through the COVID kind of period, so we're having a few things popping up. There's a few clusters happening in Sydney at the moment, which can quickly sort of, with the cricket's on now because it's our summer period now, so people are commuting across, traveling across. So yeah, we're just sort of like hanging on real tight and hoping that, you know, we don't have more clusters, which closes down our venues and our entertainment precincts. So 2021, just probably I sort of stopped doing music full time probably 3 years ago because I just got sick of, you know, cold winters and hot summers with no heating or cooling and and all that kind of stuff. So I went back to teaching or lecturing in horticulture, and then now I work with trades apprentices, so just to help pay the bill, and I live with my partner and her little girl who's 9 years old. So I try and have a day job, you know, to help things out and help finance the music, you know, stuff. So as well, so just be more of the same, you know, playing with the same guys. You know, we were due to go to the States and stuff and catch up with Kim and a few other people this year, but that didn't happen with COVID. So hopefully I'll get back over there and do some more gigs with. I have some bunch of friends in Austin. And
so all the bands that you've been in over the years have been very different from each other. You've worn a lot of hats artistically, and when everything settles down, where do you see yourself going
artistically?
You know, my absolute dream is to do. I mean, I do stuff with Courtney, my partner, Courtney Robb, who's a great singer-songwriter. I mean, she's just a beautiful songwriter, and I love playing. I'm a fan of Mickey Raphael, who played with Willie Nelson. I love the way he plays, you know, and I love all those older harmonica guys with, you know, people like Guy Clark, you know, who's another Texan country sort of singer guy. So I love that kind of bag. So I want to do more of that and do some of stuff with Courtney, because I've sort of hit the ceiling with a lot of my stuff, and I like, you know, now helping other people to sort of with their careers as well. So more of that, it's going to be good. More of stuff with Nick, because I love playing with Nikko, you know, because he's just a great versatile player and can play different. He's a great pedal steel player as well. You know, he plays country stuff, and he's great Freddie King sort of guitar player. So more of that, I guess. But my dream is to put a little 3-piece band together, just drums, guitar, and harmonica, like a little Walter trio.
You know who else uses that a lot is Jim Liben.
Okay, cool. I haven't heard much of Jim. I know who he is, but yeah.
Great player, totally in that class with the top harp players. But so you want to do a really stripped down trio?
Yeah, but then it's finding like the venues that that you can play in, because do people really want to hear that here? But I want to hear it, and it's just cool because you can set up in a little cafe or a little cool bar, and do that, and it's not that it's going to be sort of in people's faces too much. They can still talk and have a cup of coffee. But it's just a matter of whether people want to hear that sort of stuff. It's sometimes you got to suck it and see, and put it out there and see if
see what
the kids or people are going to. If you got to, sometimes you have to educate people. Sometimes, but it's convincing the venue first and foremost to do that stuff in the first place, and then ask them for some money for your time.
Sure.
We used to do. It's incredible what we used to do in Adelaide because people weren't into blues yet. We were energetic and we were trying to do something different and really put it out there. And we were putting, 300-400 people into venues that weren't even blues venues. They were just like bars, that didn't even have music in it before. But just had an energy, and we used to dress up a bit and wear funny suits and hats and stuff. And
you put on a show. Yeah, you put on a show. And you promoted it yourself, and you were in control of it. That's great. And I'm sure you have fans that have followed you through your journey. So
it's really weird because I remember I was in New Orleans once, and I was in the French Quarter, and I'd walk. When I landed, this is 2013. I ended up in Bourbon Street, and two college boys come up to me and grab me and go, "Hey man, nice sight," and they grabbed my sideburns, and I went, "Oh my golly, man, get me out of here!" I hated it, and there's all drunk college kids, walking down the streets, and I thought, man, this is New Orleans. This is a far cry from Smiley Lewis and and Professor Longhair and all these guys, And then I kept walking further down Bourbon Street, and I came more into the black community areas. I'm not sure if I was supposed to walk around the area, but I did, and I could smell the food, and I could hear. I just felt an ambience. I thought this is really nice, and I thought if anything, it reminded me a little bit of the northern beaches in Sydney, with the fig trees and the humidity. It just reminded me of that, and I thought, well, if anything, at least I'll have that. There's some pretty, and there's some people walking with some prams and some kids. Oh, it's quite nice, Then I started hearing a bit of music. And then I saw this club. I can't remember the name of the club, but the Spotted Cat or something. It was closed, but it had some posters on the window, and it had Lightning Malcolm here in a couple of nights. And I just played with Lightning Malcolm with a friend's band in called Old Grey Mule with Kenny Kimbrough and a few other people in Mississippi, in Clarksdale. Oh. And so I thought, I know Lightning Malcolm, I'll just play with him, so I'll come to his gig. And there was these two guys standing there. They were from New Zealand, and they were looking at the poster, and I just happened to say to them, "Hey guys, man, you got to go and see Lightning Malcolm. It's great, And they turned around, they go, "Oh my God, man, it's Snooks." And I'm going, they said, "Man, we saw you in Sydney, playing in Sydney, which is 13 hours from me." Like I'd done a couple of gigs there, and they were over on holidays from New Zealand, which is miles away, 3,000 miles away across the ditch. And this is in New Orleans. And they said, "Have you been to New Orleans before?" I said, "Never." They said, "Well, come and hang out with us. We'll take you to Chihuahua and all these different places." And that's when I met all these great musicians. And and some of them gave me a lot of inspiration because they heard me singing, and they'd say, "Man, like you've got that Aussie thing going. You don't sound like a guy that's from Austin, or you don't sound like a guy that's from New York, or a guy, you've got Austin, you've got New York, you've got that, you've got Australia. So you're not pigeonholed, so you're quite unique. So you might not be the best, but you're unique. You sound like all these different things."
I've noticed on your page, you're really supportive with lots of acts that are from Southern Australia, and you're sort of like
mentor.
It's like you're a veteran and a team player.
Yeah, I love, seeing people excel in the music. I'm there to sort of promote, I like this kind of music, and I think there's a lot. To me, it's electric folk music. There's so many different styles you can pull from. So I think it's a great basis. So I like to share my knowledge that I have. I mean, I didn't have like the US guys have got. We had to feed off a record. So when I've been to the States, I can go see Jimmy Vaughan play. He's one of the greatest guitar players in the world. I can see him play for 4 hours with a 20-minute break and pay $5. If I come and see him here, he'll play for 45 minutes and I'm going to pay $80.
Yeah.
Right, and it would only happen once every 2 or 3 years.
And I only get to see him once, you know. Whereas when I was in Austin, I'd go and see. When I was in Austin, I didn't see a whole bunch of blues bands. I went there looking for different things. So I'd go and see Red Volcar, or I'd go see Dale Watson, and people like that. And I'd go see Danny Freeman as well. But I was going to see those guys every night. So imagine if I had been there for 10 years, seeing that and learning how they set stuff up, how they do things. And it's about not rushing. It's about, I try and tell young people, don't rush. They say, what amp settings are you using? What are you doing here? What are you doing? I said, how about you just work on your technique, listen to the records. Amplifiers and microphones will come later once you've found your thing. But don't rush it. It's not like you're going to get hit by a bus tomorrow. It takes a long time. It's a learning curve, and you just have to. That's why a lot of the American artists are so good, because not only is it their music, it was accessible, and you could go and see it, and you could learn it. You could talk to the guys. You know, if you're around in the 50s in Chicago, you could walk after the gig, and you were interested in harmonica, you might be able to talk to a little while to her or something, you know. After,
Yeah.
if you're in a good mood.
I have to say, I mean, I really, you've got your own vocal style, and you can take it in any direction you want. And, you know, good luck in the future with this rock and harmonica 3-piece, and also with Courtney. I look forward to hearing you and Courtney. I saw some clips of it. It sounds really good.
Yes, love your vocals, and we wish you all the luck, and we hope that our paths will cross either in Australia or here in the States when all of this gets a little bit, you know, worked out for 2021.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today and sharing us all those wonderful stories.
You want to play?
Thank you.
Yeah, take us out with a little harmonica again.
Oh man, what am I going to do now?
Bravo.
Bravo. All right. A lot to
I'm on the spot.
La Vie from Adelaide, South Australia.
And thank you to our sponsor, the Chicago Blues Network, bringing Chicago blues to the world. This is Stephanie Tice, and
I'm Johnny Bergen. Thanks for watching No Border Blues.
Thank you, guys.